Chag Sameach, Good Yontif. In interviews after the Beatles broke up, John Lennon used to say that Paul McCartney just wrote silly love songs. I think what John was implying here is that the great John Lennon, he wrote the intellectual songs, and Paul just wrote the sentimental ditties. So, in 1976, Paul and his band Wings released a huge hit, Silly Love Songs. Of course, it went to number one. I don't think John Lennon had any number ones as a solo artist. Years later, Paul McCartney told Billboard magazine, "Over the years, people have said, he sings love songs, he writes love songs, he's so soppy at times. So I thought, well, I know what they mean, but people have been doing love songs forever. I like them, other people like them, and there's a lot of people I love. I'm lucky enough to have that in my life. So the idea that you may call them silly, well, what's wrong with that?" The song was Silly Love Songs, in a way, to answer people who just accuse me of being soppy. The nice payoff now is that a lot of people I meet who are at the age where they've just got a couple of kids and have grown up a bit, settling down, they'll say to me, "I thought you were really soppy for years, but I get it now. I see what you were doing." And by the way, Paul continues, Silly Love Songs had a good bass line and it worked really well live. So what's wrong with love songs? People love them. And there's something about love. Here we are at Pesach, a holy day. A day last night we might have debated ideas, big ideas of freedom from slavery, of God's power, of the messianic future. And today, we chant, beautifully I'll add, a silly love song. Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, is love poetry, pretty sexy love poetry. It doesn't mention God's name, only one of two books in our Bible that doesn't mention God's name. It's mainly a dialogue of two young, unmarried lovers. The male, usually called Dod, the beloved, and the female, Ra'aya, also could mean beloved. They sing about body parts and kisses and nature, the stuff of love. And as Paul McCartney sings, "And what's wrong with that? I'd like to know." Nothing's wrong with that. But why at Pesach? What does Pesach have to do with love? Or to quote another famous song, similar era, what's love got to do with it? So let's look at how Jewish tradition has read Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. In the Mishnah, in the ancient work of oral law, when our sages are debating which books should make it into the Holy Scriptures, into what we call the Hebrew Bible, two that confounded them were Kohelet, Book of Ecclesiastes, which we read at Sukkot, and Shir HaShirim. Maybe Kohelet was too dark for them. And Shir HaShirim, of course, maybe too sexy for them. And, as I said, it doesn't mention the name of God. But then the great sage Akiva, picture of him standing up and saying, "God forbid, no one in Israel ever disputed the status of Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs. For the whole world is not worth the day on which the Song of Songs was given to Israel. For all the writings are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holiest of the holy." It's a little bit of a wordplay, Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, and he says, Kodesh Kedoshim, the Holy of Holies. It's also Kodesh Kedoshim is the inner part of the sanctuary in the temple. All the writings in the Bible are holy, but the Song of Songs is the holiest of the holy. From ancient times, our rabbis interpreted Shir HaShirim to be an allegory for the love between God and the people of Israel, between God and the Jewish people. If you get an Art Scroll, which is an ultra-Orthodox publication, if you get the Art Scroll edition of Shir HaShirim, it actually doesn't have a translation in it. Maybe it's a little too sexy, you don't want the kids reading that. It has, instead of a translation, Rashi's commentary, the medieval sages' Rashi's commentary that brings together rabbinic ideas, rabbinic allegories about Shir HaShirim. An allegory is when you say, well, this word actually means this word actually means this word, like when it talks about King Solomon, it's actually talking about God. When it's talking about breasts, it's actually talking about the 2 tablets of the law, things like that. Another medieval sage, the Rambam, writes that the Song of Songs is a parable explaining V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, about loving God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. This is all good, but it's taking away from the good part. Why do we like love songs? Because love is real. Because people meeting each other, falling in love, sexy things, that's life. I hope we all experience that. We've all experienced parts of it. So when the rabbis try to, quote, spiritualize Shir HaShirim, are they doing a disservice to the work? In rabbinical school, I took a class on Shir HaShirim and the interpretations of it, and I remember thinking, well, but this is taking away from the beauty of it. They're getting it wrong. But maybe they are and they aren't. The Bible scholar at Harvard, John D. Levinson, writes that when someone says they got it all wrong, it's really about love and sex, he says, but at best, this tells only half the story. The process actually moves in both directions. When, for example, the rabbis interpret the first spoken words of the Song of Songs, let him give me the kisses of his mouth, as applying to Israel at the time they went up to Mount Sinai, they are not only reading the Song of Songs in light of the Exodus. They are also reading the Exodus in light of the Song of Songs, finding passionate love in a text that makes no explicit reference to love of any sort. So they're telling us to read Shir HaShirim about spiritual love, but maybe they were telling us to read the Exodus, what we talk about here at Pesach, as, let's say, more sexy love. Back to Levinson, the effect of this interpretive move is profound. Events in the Torah that are not described as motivated by love, certainly not by anything analogous to sexual love, are now depicted in strikingly earthy sexual language of a masterpiece of ancient erotic literature. If it is true that the midrashic interpretation drains some of the heat and blood out of the song, it is also the case then that the same interpretation perfuses the heat and blood throughout the scriptures. The Torah, in fact, the entire Bible, becomes an account of the love affair, a sometimes stormy and tragic one, to be sure, of God and the Jewish people. The love affair. And love affairs happen here on earth, and they're beautiful, and they're messy, and they're sexy, and they're sad. So at the same time, our tradition, quote, spiritualizes the erotic and maybe eroticizes the spiritual. It's the same we have the both at the same time. So I want to dig in a little bit into Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, to talk about this love and see what it brings out without just by looking at the words, without using our rabbinic tradition saying, well, this is talking about God, and this is talking about the people of Israel, and this is talking about the Torah. So I'm following an article from the biblical scholar Baruch Alster, and he brings some examples. The dode, the man, maybe the boy, these are some examples of things that he says. From chapter 8, he says, "You that dwell in gardens," he's speaking to his beloved, "the companions hearken for your voice. Cause me to hear it." What is he saying? He wants this love to be proclaimed out so everybody can hear. But then the Ra'ayah, the girl, answers him, "Make haste, my beloved, and you should be like a gazelle or a young hart, H-A-R-T, upon the mountains of spices." And then the next chapter, the boy says, "You are like a mare in Pharaoh's chariots. I have compared you, O my love. Your cheeks are comely with circlets, your neck with beads. We will make you circlets of gold with studs of silver." And then she responds, "While the king sat at his table, my spikenard sent forth its fragrance. My beloved is unto me as a bag of myrrh that lies between my breasts. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of henna in the vineyards of Ein Gedi." So we have the boy wanting the love to be very public. Like all the chariots lined up. He wants everybody to hear the song. But the girl wants to hold the love close, like her necklace of fragrance that she wears, let's say, under her shirt. So what's the saying? Sometimes, let's maybe spiritualize this for a second. Our love for God, our Jewish life. Sometimes we want to be out there and be very assertive about our Judaism and that show the world, maybe especially at Pesach. I remember as a little kid bringing my matzah to lunch and explaining and saying how great this was to everybody. But sometimes Judaism is a very inward thing, about study and prayer and making yourself a better, being inward work. And debating these two kinds of ways of expressing love in the sexy terms can also be seen as an example in our Jewish life. So then the question, why at Pesach especially? Well, think to last night at your Seder. Maybe it was intimate. The people you loved were there with you. It was here. There was food. It was sensuous. Pesach is about real relationships, not just the, quote, spiritual relationship of God bringing us out of Egypt. But maybe, not just maybe, we do experience this lofty love through actual real love with real people in real relationships. Rabbi Dov Peretz Elkins writes, Akiva sensed the power of love in his own life, and that these moving lyrical verses express something of divine importance. He realized that human love is only a metaphor for the love of God. Akiva's insight was powerful. Love is determinative. We only know the love of God because we know love between people. We only know love, let's say, of humanity because we love our parents, or our parents love us, or our siblings, or our friends. People at Holy Blossom want to do acts of justice because we know what relationships are. And we want to heal relationships in the world. But it starts with actual, real love. The love between the Dod and the Ra'aya in Shir HaShirim. Dov Peretzelkin continues, Pesach is a time to recognize the healing forces of love in our life and express connectedness in the steadfast love, the chesed of the covenant with God and the Jewish people. At Seder, when we talk about the big themes of freedom, of power, of slavery, of all these things, how do we live them out in life? Through relationships with real people, through acts of love, chesed. That's what Shir HaShirim is about. Chag Sameach.